The strangest part of Kurukshetra isn't the weapons, it's the quiet. A million hearts trying to beat softly, as if softness could bargain with tomorrow. And somewhere in that hush, five men carry enough power to tilt the whole earth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're on the edge of Kurukshetra before dawn, but the night still clings. The sky is a deep, tired blue, and the stars look far away, like they're trying not to get involved. Dust sits on everything, the way flour settles in a kitchen, soft and unavoidable. It coats your tongue the moment you breathe. The camps stretch out like two sleeping cities, facing one another. Not peaceful cities, cities made of leather tents, stacked chariots, tethered horses, and elephants that breathe like slow bellows in the dark. You smell campfires dying down, ghee cooling in iron pots, sweat baked into cotton, and that heavy, unmistakable truth of elephants, warm, earthy, and absolutely not shy. Somewhere, a conch shell calls, just a test note, not the full cry. It makes the hair along your arms lift. Then, silence returns, thick as a quilt. Even the river wind seems to step carefully. You walk between rows of sleeping men, careful where you place your feet. A spear rests against a wheel. A bow lies wrapped in cloth, as if it might feel cold. A soldier sleeps with his helmet still on, because it's easier than trusting the night. You find little pockets of wakefulness, a pair of young footmen whispering prayers into their palms, a cook stirring embers because he can't stop moving, a charioteer rubbing oil into the leather reins, like the reins might carry fear and need comforting. The funny part, if you can call it funny, is how ordinary it all looks. Someone snores like he's back at home, as if tomorrow is a wedding, not a war. Someone else has arranged his sandals neatly beside his bedroll, proud as a king. The sandals will not be the problem. The sandals never are. The beds are straw mats, rough as dry grass on your skin. No soft pillows, no silence you can purchase. The good news, you're surrounded by an army. The bad news, so is everyone else. Horses stamp and toss their heads, impatient with the long wait. Their breath makes pale clouds in the cooler air before sunrise. A bell on a harness gives a small, accidental chime, and the nearest sentry straightens at once. Even sound feels like it has consequences here. In the distance, you can see banners folded down for the night, shapes hunched like sleeping birds, standards that will rise at dawn and declare names like thunder. You imagine the colors catching first light, gold, crimson, deep indigo, too beautiful for what they're meant to lead. And yet, the beauty is real, annoyingly real. You drift closer to the heart of the Pandava camp first, where the air carries jasmine oil and the smoke of sacred offerings. Someone has kept a small lamp burning before a simple altar. The flame is steady, like it's made a vow of its own. Priests murmur blessings in low voices, feeding the fire with careful hands. Beyond them, warriors sleep in pieces rather than in wholeness, a hand clenched around a strap, a knee bent, ready to rise, a face turned toward the ground as if the earth might give comfort. And the earth, this earth, feels crowded already. Even before the first conch blast, it holds the weight of all the footsteps that have arrived from every direction. Kings, princes, foot soldiers, archers, elephant riders. So many promises wearing armor. You catch a murmur. Not a conversation, just a single word, breathed like a secret. Tomorrow. It slips into the dark and vanishes, but it leaves a chill behind. Now you move, slow and quiet, toward the other side. The Kaurava camp is bigger, louder even in sleep. More torches, more guards, more horses fed and groomed as if polish could guarantee victory. Brass glints everywhere. Helmets, armbands, spear points, caught by firelight and turned into small suns. There are musicians too, sitting awake with their instruments across their knees. They aren't playing, not yet, but the drums are there, like hearts waiting for permission. The conches are there, pale and curved, ready to split the morning. And in the middle of all this, you feel it. Not a sound, not a smell, a pressure in the air, like the sky itself is holding a breath it won't release. Because somewhere among these tents, among these chariots lined up like sleeping beasts, are the ones everyone watches, even when their eyes are closed. Bhishma, the grandfather with vows, heavier than armor. Drona, the teacher whose hands remember every lesson they ever gave. Karna, bright as the sun and just as difficult to look at directly. Arjuna, quiet and exact, the storm that aims. Bhima, huge as a hill, with a laugh that can shake courage loose from your ribs. Tonight, they are not on the field. Tonight, they are still men, resting, thinking, listening to the same night wind you hear. If you pass near the chariots of the great ones, the gods stand straighter without knowing why, as if greatness has a scent. See them in the dark, Bhishma lying awake, eyes open, letting the past walk across his chest like a slow procession. Drona with his thoughts arranged like arrows in a quiver, each one precise, each one ready. Karna staring up at the stars as if they owe him answers. Arjuna near Krishna, with the horses close, with Gandiva never far from reach. Bhima asleep in the blunt, fearless way only the strongest can manage, like nothing in the world could possibly lift him. The night itself tries to warn you. A jackal cries out beyond the tents, sharp and lonely. Birds stir where birds should not be stirring. A strange wind passes, hot and then suddenly cool, and the lamps flicker in unison. No one runs. No one truly rests either. Men roll onto their backs, then onto their sides, then back again, searching for a comfortable shape for their dread. You stand there, breathing in smoke and dust, listening to the low chorus of an army pretending to sleep. Somewhere, far away in Hastinapura, a blind king refuses sight, but demands every detail. And somewhere closer, so close you could reach out and touch it, the first light is beginning to thin the darkness at the rim of the world. This is the hour before the conches, the hour before names become echoes, the hour when power still has the decency to sit quietly in a tent and wait. Stay here a little longer. Feel the grit of Kurukshetra under your feet. Hear the soft creak of chariot wheels settling in the sand. Because when the sun finally lifts its face over this field, the 5 most dangerous beings to ever lift a weapon will rise with it. But before the arrows fly, before the conch shells shatter the silence, you drift through the Kaurava camp toward the edge where the tents grow quieter. The smell changes as you go. Less cooking smoke, more lamp oil and leather, a sharp, clean bite of metal being rubbed smooth. A guard tries to stand straighter when you pass, then gives up halfway. It's hard to look fierce at the end of a night like this. Even the horses seem to be saving their energy, heads low, breath steaming in soft clouds that vanish as soon as they appear. You find the tent by the way the space around it behaves. Men don't crowd it. They don't laugh near it. They don't spit near it either, which tells you everything you need to know. Inside, a single ghee lamp makes the air honey gold. And there he is. Bhishma sits like a mountain that has decided, politely, to be seated. His hair is white, not the delicate white of age, but the bright white of river foam. His shoulders are still broad, though the skin at his elbows and knuckles has that dry, paper-thin look of long years. A cloth rests over one shoulder, rough cotton, plain and folded, with the care of a man who has worn the same kind of cloth through too many seasons to bother with anything fancier. In his hands is a bow, not displayed, not worshipped, not treated like a trophy, just maintained. He runs oil along the wood as if he's calming an old animal. He checks the string with a thumb that knows exactly how much tension tomorrow will demand. Beside him lie arrows stacked so neatly you'd think the war was a ceremony and he was the priest. The lamp crackles. Outside, someone coughs and tries to smother it like it's an insult. You're close enough now to hear Bhishma breathe, slow, even. The kind of breath you hear from a man who has had 200 years to practice being unafraid. And still, there's weight in it. Not fear, something heavier. You can feel it in your own chest, like the air has thickened. Like the tent holds not just one warrior, but every promise he ever made, pressing down from the rafters. Bhishma's eyes lift for a moment, unfocused, looking past the bow, past the lamp, past you, and you're suddenly not in the tent anymore. You're on a riverbank long ago, when the world still smelled new. The Ganga moves beside you, broad and cold, moonlight breaking on her ripples like scattered silver coins. The wind off the water carries wet earth and lotus. A king stands there, Shantanu, tall, proud, bewildered by love. And a boy stands there too, not old, not white-haired, barefooted, with river sand clinging to his ankles. Devavrata. The name he had before Bhishma became heavier than armor. You feel the movement tighten like a bowstring, a fisherman's daughter, a father bargaining like a man selling the future, a king trapped between desire and duty, and the boy, still only a boy, decides, not with drama, not with pleading, with the clean, terrifying calm of someone who will never take a promise back once he's spoken it. He gives up the throne. He gives up children. He gives up an entire life that could have been soft. The river listens, the sky listens, and when he takes that vow, it lands on the world like a bell struck hard. It rings through time, even now. Bhishma's hands pause on the bow. For a moment, just a moment, you see his jaw tighten the way a man tightens a strap before a long journey. He doesn't look sad exactly. He looks bound. He returns to the present with a blink. The lamp is still burning. The bow is still in his hands. The camp is still holding its breath outside. He sets the bow across his knees and rolls his shoulders once, slow. The movement is careful, not weak, never weak, but measured, like he knows exactly how much of tomorrow his body can spend. And then his fingers go to a small mark on his forearm, half hidden under cloth. A thread tied there long ago. A simple thing, a strip of fiber, nothing that should be able to hold a man like this. But vows don't need to be thick to be unbreakable. You're standing there, breathing in oil and old wood and ghee smoke, and you understand something without anyone needing to explain it. This is a man who has been loyal for so long that loyalty has become his skin. Outside, the camp shifts. Footsteps in sand, the soft clink of armor being buckled. Someone mutters a prayer badly, the way nervous men do, stumbling over words they've known since childhood. Bhishma rises, not quickly, not slowly either. He rises the way a tree rises, inevitable. The tent feels smaller the moment he stands, as if it's embarrassed to have ever tried to contain him. He reaches for a helmet, then decides against it, setting it down again. Maybe it pinches. Maybe he doesn't care. There's a certain luxury in being the one warrior almost no one believes can be brought down. He steps out of the tent, and the morning air meets him like a servant, cool for a heartbeat, then already warming, already turning the dust into that familiar dry smell. Sun-baked earth, horse sweat, stale smoke, crushed grass. You follow him into the lane between tents, and the lane opens without anyone ordering it to. Men move aside the way water parts around a stone, not because they're told to, because their bodies decide before their minds do. A young soldier stands too close, staring, mouth slightly open. His friend yanks him back by the elbow so fast the boy nearly falls. The friend looks offended on Bhishma's behalf, as if getting stepped on by the grandsire would be a personal dishonor. Bhishma doesn't notice, or he pretends not to. His gaze is fixed ahead, where the chariots wait, their wheels half sunk in sand, their poles decorated, their banners furled for now like sleeping birds. An elephant nearby lifts its trunk and huffs, then goes oddly still. Even the great animal seems to know that certain beings are not to be tested. You're close enough to see the lines on Bhishma's face in this pale light. They aren't soft lines. They're the lines of decisions, each one a road taken, each one a door shut behind him. A servant approaches with a water skin, hands trembling just slightly. Bhishma takes it, drinks, and hands it back. The servant bows so deeply, it looks like he might decide to live on the ground permanently. Bhishma's mouth twitches, almost a smile, almost. If there's humor in him, it's the kind that doesn't waste time on laughter. The chariot is brought, not rushed. Nothing about Bhishma is rushed. The horses stamp and snort, tossing their heads, impatient with the smell of too many men and too many fears. The driver, an older man, sensible enough to look serious, keeps his hands steady on the reins. Bhishma steps up onto the chariot as if stepping onto a familiar veranda. The wood creaks under his weight, not complaining, just acknowledging. And then the banner is lifted. It catches the first edge of wind. The cloth snaps once, sharp as a whip, and men flinch even though it's only fabric. It's as if everyone's nerves are already tuned to the sound of things beginning. You stand in the dust beside the chariot wheel, so close you can see grit clinging to the spokes, and you realize something else. Bhishma isn't dressed for glory. No jewels, no unnecessary shine. His armor is functional, worn where it should be worn, as if it's been repaired 100 times and will be repaired again if the world lasts long enough. This isn't a young prince dressing up to be admired. This is an old guardian walking out to do what he swore he would do, even when the oath tastes like ash. His eyes move across the camp, and you can tell what he sees without him pointing. Boys. So many boys pretending to be men, adjusting straps that don't quite fit, trying to look like the stories they grew up hearing. Princes he bounced on his knee once. Students he watched learned to stand with a bow. Nephews who used to run through palace corridors with sticky hands from sweets. Now they hold spears. Now they sit on elephants. Now they try not to look at him too long, because if they remember he is family, the hands will shake. Bhishma's gaze goes farther, toward the edge of the field where the Pandava camp lies beyond the haze. He can't see their faces clearly from here, but he knows them. He knows the way Arjuna stands, even when he's still. He knows Bhima's shape, like a boulder learned to walk. He knows Yudhishthira's quiet steadiness, the way it makes other men want to lean on him. He knows them because he helped raise them too. That's the cruel joke the morning tells. The same grandfather for both sides, the same hands that blessed them, the same old eyes that will now watch them fall, or pretend he doesn't watch, because watching would crack something he has kept intact for 2 centuries. A conch sounds somewhere, just one, testing its voice. It rolls across the camp like a long breath. Men lift their heads. Birds burst from the sparse trees and wheel away, as if they've suddenly remembered somewhere else to be. Bhishma closes his eyes for the briefest moment, not prayerful, not dramatic, just a man meeting the inside of himself. And there, behind the eyelids, you sense it again, that other gift he carries. Not the bow, not the armor, the strange, cold certainty that the end cannot come for him unless he allows it. A boon, like a locked door only he can open. It isn't comfort, not truly. It's responsibility shaped like immortality. Because if you cannot be taken, then every day you remain standing becomes a choice. Every sunrise becomes something you must either accept or refuse. Bhishma opens his eyes and looks toward the paling horizon. His voice, when he finally uses it, is quiet enough that only those closest would catch it. One brief sentence, more like a reminder than a declaration. I will choose the hour. That's all. No grand speech, no roaring vow. Just the plain truth of a man who has outlived most of the world and intends, for now, to outlive this day too. The driver clicks his tongue softly. The horses lean forward, eager, offended by stillness. The chariot begins to roll. The wheels crunch over sand and dry grass. The sound is ordinary, but the effect isn't. As Bhishma's chariot moves, men step aside again and again, a tide making room for something older than kingungs. Even the officers who have spent the night shouting orders lower their voices without meaning to. You walk alongside for a little while, close enough to feel the faint vibration of the wheel through the ground. The morning heat starts to build, gentle but insistent, as if the sun is warming its hands before lifting a sword. Smoke from 100 dying fires drifts slow, mixing with dust. You taste it on your tongue. Bitter, familiar, the flavor of a place where too many people have slept on fear. Ahead, the field opens. Kurukshetra, flat, wide, already marked by hoofprints and the scars of camp life. Beyond it, the other army waits like a dark line at the edge of vision. Banners still, silhouettes of elephants and chariots rising from the haze. And Bhishma, grandfather, guardian, vow-made flesh, rides toward it all without hesitation. Not because his heart is simple, because his promise is. You stand there and watch the back of him as the chariot rolls on, and you feel the paradox in your bones. To love and to oppose, to protect and to harm, to know a throne is crooked and still hold it upright because you swore. The sky lightens another shade. More conches answer now, farther off, then closer, voices multiplying, as if the whole world has decided to sing. Bhishma lifts his bow. and rests it across his knees, easy as breathing. The horses toss their manes, sunlight catching in the strands. The dust rises behind the wheels in a soft curtain, and as the first true line of sun breaks over the rim of the earth, the Kaurava army seems to straighten, as if held up by the presence of one ancient man who refuses to fall until he is ready. The day is here, and Bhishma, carrying 200 years on his shoulders like an invisible mountain, rides out to meet it. And yet, even Bhishma, even the immortal grandfather, learned his craft from someone. So your feet carry you away from the roar of conches and toward the steadier sounds behind the front line. Harness leather creaking, grooms murmuring, arrows being counted like grains of rice. The sun is fully awake now. It leans on your shoulders with that early heat that feels gentle only because worse is coming. In the Kaurava camp, there's a tent that doesn't glitter the way the royal ones do. No peacock feather fans, no laughing courtiers, just order. The kind of order that smells of oiled wood, sharpened iron, and ink dried on palm leaf. Because even war needs lists, and someone has to keep them. Drona sits there like a man who was born for quiet and trained himself into thunder. A Brahmin face, spare and controlled, with the calm of someone who once lived by reciting sacred words. But his hands are not priestly. They are a bowman's hands, strong at the base of the thumb, calloused where the string bites, steady like a well's stone rim. You can feel it even from a little distance, the way people lower their voices near him without being told. Not fear, exactly. More like respect mixed with the discomfort of being seen too clearly. A servant lays out armor pieces near him, careful as if arranging offerings. Drona doesn't fuss over them. He checks a strap, tightens it once, and that is enough. There's a pot of water nearby, plain and unadorned, and for a moment, it's almost funny. This fierce commander with a humble water pot, like he's still one step away from a forest hermitage. Almost. Then he looks up toward the field, toward where Bhishma's chariot has already rolled out, and his eyes harden, not with hatred, but with decision. Because Drona knows what the first day will demand, and worse, he knows what the later days will demand. You're standing close enough to catch the smallest details. The faint scent of sandalwood paste on his skin, the dust already collecting at the edge of his anklets, the thin line of sunlight slicing through the tent flap and landing on his bow like a blessing. A warrior priest, or a priest turned into a weapon. Either way, he rises, and as he does, the world tilts, not from noise, but from memory. Because you can't look at Drona without seeing the boys he made, and you can't see those boys without being pulled backward years and years into the clean, bright heat of a training ground. It smells different there. No elephant dung, no fierce sweat of a million men. Just grass crushed under bare feet, oil rubbed into bowstrings, and the sharp green scent of neem trees giving a little shade that never quite wins against the sun. You're standing at the edge of the practice field in Hastinapura, squinting into the glare. Rows of princes are lined up, trying to look effortless while sweating through their fine cloth. Some are eager, some are smug. A few are silently panicking because it turns out a bow is less romantic when it bruises your forearm. Drona walks among them without shouting. He doesn't need to. His silence is louder than most men's anger. He sets a wooden bird high in a tree. Not too high, high enough. Then he calls the students forward, one by one, to take aim. They raise their bows and hold their breath, and Drona asks each of them what they see. Their thoughts clatter like dropped metal. Someone says they see the tree. Someone sees branches. Someone sees the bird. Someone sees the sky behind it. Someone sees Drona himself, watching, which is the worst distraction of all. One boy, trying to be poetic, probably sees his future fame. Another, trying to impress, sees the whole universe. Drona lets them speak. He doesn't mock them. But you can feel the impatience under his calm, like a tiger lying down with its tail still twitching. Then Arjuna steps forward, not taller than the others, not louder, but the air tightens around him anyway, as if the bowstring in his hands has pulled the whole world a little taut. Drona asks him the same question, and Arjuna, without flourishes, gives the only answer that matters. He tells his teacher he sees only the eye, just the eye, nothing else. Drona's mouth doesn't quite smile, but something in him eases, like a man hearing a note finally sung in tune after a long day of noise. He tells Arjuna to shoot. You can feel your own shoulders tense, as if you're the one holding the bow. The string hums, the arrow flies, and up in the tree, the wooden bird's eye is struck so cleanly it feels less like a hit and more like inevitability. The other princes make sounds, impressed, annoyed, pretending they were never trying that hard anyway. Somewhere in the back of it all, someone mutters that Arjuna was probably born with a bow in his hand, which in that family is only slightly exaggerated. Drona doesn't praise him with a speech. He simply nods, once as if to say, "Yes, this is what you are." And right then, you understand something about Drona. He doesn't love noise. He loves precision. He loves the mind that can become still, because a still mind can turn into an arrow. And an arrow can change a kingdom. There were other lessons too, of course, hours of them, days that smelled of sweat and sun-warmed dust, of bruised knuckles and oiled leather. Drona teaching stances, teaching breath, teaching how to stand your ground when a larger man tries to shake you. And the boys, Pandavas and Kauravas together, learning side by side, joking like brothers until pride flared, and someone had to be dragged apart by the ear. You can picture it so clearly, it almost makes you laugh. Princes of royal blood, rolling in the dirt like street boys, because someone said someone else's aim was sloppy. Drona watching with the tired patience of a man herding lions. And above it all, the strange tenderness of it, because he did love them in the way a teacher loves the student who finally understands, in the way a craftsman loves the tool that doesn't fail, in the way a lonely man loves the only family he has built with his own hands. But love, in a palace, is never the only thread. Gratitude is another. Obligation another. And Drona had his own old hunger, the kind that begins as a wound and hardens into a vow. You can taste that hunger even now on the battlefield air, bitter as neem. He had once been a poor Brahmin with a warrior's knowledge and no wealth to match it. He had once needed patronage. He had once accepted it. And kings never let you forget what you accepted from them. Back in the present, the training ground vanishes like a mirage burned away by heat. The tent is here again. The war is here again. Drona steps out into the bright morning, and the sound hits you full in the chest. Conchis, drums, the deep complaining groan of elephants as they're coaxed into place. Dust already rides the wind in slow curtains. A soldier near you spits to clear grit from his mouth, then wipes his lips and pretends that's all he's worried about. You can see Duryodhana not far away, armored like a man, dressing for his own legend. He moves with the restless energy of someone who can't sit with silence. He has been awake too long. He is still hoping too hard. And when he looks at Drona, you see it plainly. This is not just respect, this is dependence. Duryodhana approaches him with the urgency of a drowning man, grabbing at the strongest rope he can find. He presses a promise out of Drona, not with threats, but with a kind of intimate pressure, reminding him of loyalty, of support, of what is owed. And Drona, who knows how vows become cages, still agrees. He binds himself to a task that sounds simple and is anything but to take Yudhishthira alive, not to bring him down in battle, not to break him, to capture him, as if war is a net you can throw neatly over a king. You're close enough to feel how that promise settles over Drona's shoulders. Not heavy like armor, heavy like wet cloth, because he knows what it means. To seize Yudhishthira, he must push through the shield around him. And the strongest part of that shield is Arjuna, his favorite student, his sharpest arrow, the boy who saw only the eye. Drona doesn't tremble, he doesn't refuse. He simply turns toward the field. And you realize with a chill that isn't from the morning air. Drona's heart might ache, but his skill does not soften. Time moves strangely after that. The first days blur with motion and noise, formations shifting like living creatures, chariots wheeling, banners snapping, dust turning the horizon into a pale brown wall. Sometimes you catch glimpses of Drona fighting under Bhishma's command, measured, controlled, as if he's still holding back something private, as if he's keeping one door closed inside himself. And then, days later, the field changes. It changes the way a room changes when an elder leaves it. Bhishma falls. Not into nothingness, he will not go when the world wants him to go, but out of command, out of movement, into stillness on a bed of arrows. The armies gather around him, stunned, like children staring at a toppled mountain. And in the stunned gap that follows, the Kaurava camp scrambles for its next pillar. That's when they turn to Drona, when they drape him in command the way you drape a man in garlands, pretty from a distance, suffocating up close. You stand near the edge of the Kaurava line when Drona mounts his chariot as leader. The air smells of crushed marigolds and hot ghee from hurried rites, done at dawn, because even in war, people cling to auspiciousness like a charm tied around the wrist. Brahmanas have been fed, blessings have been spoken, drums roll as if sound itself can hold the world together. Drona's horses stamp impatiently, snorting dust. His charioteer keeps the reins steady, but you can see the strain in his arms. Drona lifts his bow, and it feels, truly, like watching a man open a door he has kept shut for years. He does not fight like the others. Others rage or boast or throw themselves forward to be seen. Drona fights like a craftsman. Each movement has a purpose. Each arrow is placed, not flung. He advances, and the Pandava line begins to bend, not because they are weak, but because he knows them too well. He taught them where the breath catches. He taught them what fear looks like just before it becomes a mistake. You can hear it in the sound of the field. The pitch changes when Drona enters a clash. Less shouting, more sharp, startled calls, warnings, sudden retreats, the quick clatter of men repositioning. Even the elephants seem to hesitate, as if they sense something precise and unforgiving moving through the dust. And Drona does something worse than striking down warriors. He separates them. He pulls the battle into shapes, wheels within wheels, petals of moving spears, a geometry that turns brave men into confused men. You're standing there, trying to follow it, and it makes your head ache. It's like watching a river taught to flow in squares. Somewhere within that controlled chaos, Yudhishthira is always the prize, always the center of Drona's attention. Again and again, Drona surges toward him, not with hatred, but with focus, the kind of focus that once aimed at a wooden bird's eye. Now it aims at a living king. And Arjuna is forced away, pulled into other fights, other urgencies. You can feel the strain of it, even if you're only watching. A net tightening, a teacher's promise closing in. This is the moment you can almost hear Drona's mind, dry and relentless. A promise made must be kept. A debt accepted must be repaid. And love will have to sit quietly in a corner until the work is done. There is a heartbeat of calm in the middle of it, strangely enough. A brief pocket where the wind shifts and you catch the scent of trampled grass beneath all the dust. A conch blows somewhere far off, long and mournful, and for one breath, the sound is almost like a temple call. Then the pocket closes. Arrows darken the air again. Chariot wheels grind over broken ground, and Drona moves through it all, like a man walking through a storm he understands too well. You're there, close enough to feel the grit sticking to your skin, close enough to see the fine dust settling into the lines at the corners of Drona's eyes. And it hits you, softly, terribly. This isn't a stranger doing this. It is the teacher, the man who once corrected a boy's elbow angle with a gentle touch, the man who once watched a child strike a target and nodded as if proud. Now he is showing them what he never taught in the training yard. Not the stance, not the aim, not the breathing, the final thing. How it feels when skill is no longer practice. How it feels when skill becomes fate. And as Drona's chariot rolls forward, steady as a metronome, the sun climbs higher and higher, burning the mist away. The field brightens. Everything becomes clear. Too clear. And somewhere inside that clarity, you can sense it. The impossible shape of Drona's life tightening around him like a bowstring. Teacher, warrior, debtor, commander. A man who once asked a student what he saw. A man who now sees only one thing himself, the promise. And it pulls him onward, into the dust and the noise, toward the boys he raised with his own hands, and must now bring down, because the world has decided there is no other way. Now, we cross to the other side of the field, past the Pandava banners snapping like impatient birds, past the white horses steaming in the heat, to a tent where the lamps burn low even at noon. Inside, the air smells of oil, leather, and the faint sharpness of metal warmed by sun. A man sits alone, elbows on his knees, hands resting open, as if he's waiting for something to be placed there. Karna doesn't look like the kind of man who waits. He looks like the kind of man who decides. But you can feel it in the stillness around him. This is a pause he can't fight his way out of. A question with no good answer, sitting in the tent with him like an extra guest who refuses to leave. Outside, the battlefield keeps breathing. Conches, distant shouting, the low thunder of chariot wheels. Inside, there is only Karna's steady breath and the sun pressing down through canvas as if it's trying to claim him. And maybe it is, because Karna's life began with sunlight and a river that didn't ask permission. The sound is faint but clear. Water moving over mud, reeds clicking together, a bird calling from somewhere unseen. The world is quieter then, softer. No armies, no vows, no banners, just the river and a young woman standing too close to its edge. Kunti's hands tremble as she lowers a basket. The basket is small, lined carefully, tucked with cloth that smells like home, like turmeric and smoke and clean cotton. And inside, a newborn lies with a strange, impossible glow, as if the dawn itself has settled on his skin. You're right there on the bank, close enough to see the way Kunti's eyes keep flicking downriver, as if she's afraid the water will gossip. She doesn't linger. She can't. She touches the baby once, quickly, like a secret, and then the basket is on the current. The river takes it without ceremony. Water doesn't judge. Water just carries. The basket bumps over ripples, tilts, rights itself. Sunlight flashes on the surface like thrown coins. And the baby, Karna, doesn't cry the way you'd expect. He lies there like someone who has already learned a hard lesson. Even at the beginning, don't waste your strength. The river delivers him the way rivers do, casually, as if it's dropping off an errand. A fisherman sees the basket snagged near the reeds. He wades in, pants soaked, muttering about the day's work interrupted. And then he lifts the basket and stops, because this isn't fish. This is fate, bundled in cloth. Adhiratha, a charioteer by trade, is not a king. His hands are rough, his nails always stained with wheel grease, his shoulders built from hauling wood and harness. But when he brings the baby home, his wife Radha takes one look and her face changes, softening the way a hard road softens when rain finally comes. The hut is small. It smells of rice, damp earth, and the sweet sour bite of fermented curd. There's no palace music here, only the clink of pots and the neighbors' goats, complaining as if they've been wronged personally. And yet, in that humble room, Radha cradles the child like he's always belonged. She hums under her breath, off-key and sincere. Adhiratha stands there, suddenly awkward, like a man who's brought home a miracle and isn't sure where to set it down. You can feel the warmth of that place, not royal warmth, real warmth, a family kind of warmth, but warmth doesn't erase the world. Karna grows fast, too fast. A boy who runs like the wind has been pushing him from behind, laughing the whole time. By the time he's old enough to lift a practice bow, he's already watching warriors the way hungry people watch a market stall. His eyes follow the curve of every weapon, every stance, every proud walk. He learns by stealing glances and repeating them alone. And he is good, painfully, naturally good. In the dust behind the chariot sheds, you see him practice until his arms shake. The air tastes like sun-baked earth. The string bites his fingers. He doesn't complain. When the other boys stop to drink, he shoots again. When they go home, he shoots again. Because talent is a blessing, and in Karna's life, every blessing arrives tied to a stone. There's a day, of course, there's a day when the princes display their skill. A grand arena, polished and bright, with garlands hanging from railings and musicians blowing into pipes until the notes turn shrill in the heat. You're standing near the edge of the crowd, close enough to smell crushed marigolds underfoot, and the sweat of excited people packed shoulder to shoulder. Everyone's craning their necks. Everyone's waiting to be impressed. The princes step forward in their silks and armor like young lions who have been told they're already kings. Arjuna shines like a blade, freshly cleaned. The crowd loves him for it. And then Karna steps out, not in borrowed finery, not drenched in jewels, just a man with a bow and a calm so sharp it makes you blink. For one moment, the arena quiets. You can hear a bangle clink. Somewhere, a child coughs and gets hushed. Karna shows them what he can do, not with flourish, without apology. Arrows split targets that looked too small to hit. The air itself seems to make way for him. And then comes the question everyone always asks him, sooner or later. Who are you? Not what can you do, not how did you learn. Who are you? When the answer comes, charioteer's son, the crowd's admiration sours in its mouth like milk left out too long. You feel the shift. It's almost physical. Suddenly the arena has rules again. Suddenly greatness needs permission. Karna stands there while people who couldn't string his bow decide whether he deserves to exist in their sight. His jaw tightens once, that's all. And then, like a man tossing a cloak over a shivering stranger, Duryodhana steps in. He doesn't offer Karna pity. He offers him a place, a kingdom, a title, a seat that says loudly, "This man belongs among us, whether you like it or not." It isn't subtle. Duryodhana has never been subtle a day in his life. But Karna, who has swallowed insult like dry bread for years, feels something loosen inside his chest. It's dangerous, that feeling. Gratitude can become a chain so quickly you don't even hear it lock. From that day on, Karna is never alone again. Not really. He has a friend who will fight the world for him, and he has enemies who will never forgive him for daring to be brilliant without the right family name. In the quiet hours, Karna's hunger turns into something more focused. If the world demands a teacher's stamp, he will get it. He goes looking for Parashurama. You can picture the journey, dusty paths that shimmer in heat, forests that smell of resin and old leaves, ash-colored hermitages where the air is sharp with smoke from sacrificial fires. Karna arrives with humility on his face and fire hidden behind his ribs. Parashurama is the kind of man who doesn't need to raise his voice. His presence does it for him. The hermitage is simple. Bark huts, stone altars, the constant hush of wind in tall trees. Insects buzz lazily, drunk on the warm air. Somewhere, a deer steps carefully, as if it knows this ground is not meant for clumsy feet. Karna bows. He asks to be taught. Parashurama agrees, because Karna tells him the one thing that opens the door. He claims a berth that fits the teacher's rules. And if you're standing there, listening, you can feel the lie settle into the soil like a seed. Training under Parashurama is not gentle. It is not the neat lessons of a palace yard. It's dawn drills until your stomach forgets food exists. It's holding stances while sweat runs down your spine and your muscles beg you to stop. It's learning mantras that feel like they vibrate in your bones, words that taste metallic on the tongue. Karna absorbs it all, like parched land taking the first rain. He becomes, under that harsh attention, something terrifyingly complete. Not just skill, control, but the world that gives gifts always sends an invoice. One afternoon when the sun is thick and heavy, and even the birds seem tired, Parashurama lies down with his head resting in Karna's lap. It's an intimate trust, almost fatherly. The forest holds its breath. Leaves barely move. The air smells of hot sap and ash. An insect crawls onto Karna's leg. It bites. Karna doesn't shift. He doesn't flinch. He sits perfectly still while the pain blooms. Quiet, insistent, humiliating. Because if his teacher wakes, the lesson ends, and Karna cannot bear to lose even a single scrap of what he's being given. You're close enough to see his fingers curl once into the fabric, the only sign that he's still human. A dark stain spreads where the bite has torn skin, but Karna stays motionless, face calm as carved stone. Parashurama wakes anyway. He sees, and in that moment, the teacher understands. A Brahmin would have cried out. A Brahmin would have shifted. Only a warrior, trained to hold steady through pain, would sit like this. Parashurama's disappointment is colder than anger. It lands without shouting. He speaks a curse, not with drama, but with certainty, as if he's naming a thing that's already true. At the moment, Karna needs his greatest knowledge most. The mantras will slip away from him like water through fingers. Karna tries to explain. He tries to plead, but some doors, once shut, don't reopen. Parashurama turns away, and the forest seems to turn with him. Karna leaves the hermitage carrying everything he came for, and the hidden crack running through it. Back in the tent at Kurukshetra, that crack is what you feel when you look at him. Not weakness, a fault line. And there's more. Because Karna is not only a man made of training and pride. He was born with something no teacher can give. Armor, not straps, and plates. Something that belonged to his very skin. A gleam that sits on him like sunlight refusing to leave. And earrings, bright, uncanny, resting against his neck as if they grew there. When he was younger, people stared. When he got older, they stared harder. Some stared with awe, some stared with calculation. And one day, calculation arrives, wearing a humble face. Indra comes disguised like a Brahmin who has walked too far under too hot sun. His feet look dusty, his voice sounds ordinary, but the air around him is too still. Even the birds seem to pause, suspicious. You're there at Karna's doorway when the visitor asks for alms, not grain, not a cow. He asks for the armor. He asks for the earrings. It's the kind of request that makes your stomach drop because it isn't really a request at all. It's a test dressed up as hunger. Karna understands immediately. He understands, and he smiles anyway, because this is the trap his life keeps setting. Be less than you are, and you'll be mocked. Be generous, and you'll be used. He has built his honor like a fortress. He will not let anyone see it crumble. So he agrees. No long ceremony, no delay. He tells the visitor simply, "Ask me for anything," and the words sound almost cheerful, as if he's offering sweet water on a hot day. What happens next is quiet and unbearable. Karna prepares himself. Oil lamps flicker, though it's daytime. The air smells of iron and incense, sharp enough to sting. He removes the divine gifts from his own body with his own hands, refusing help. His face stays composed, but his breath goes careful, measured, like a man walking across thin ice. When it's done, the light around him changes. It's subtle, but you feel it, like a room after a lamp is snuffed. He offers the armor and earrings as alms, palms steady, not because it's wise, because it's who he has decided to be. Indra, not unkind even in theft, reveals himself. He gives Karna something in return, a single thunderous weapon meant to bring down anyone it strikes. One use, one chance. A gift that is also a limit. Even rewards come with rules. Karna accepts it without looking relieved. Relief isn't really his habit. And now, here at Kurukshetra, with the sun blazing overhead and the tent canvas glowing pale gold, you understand the shape of his life. A boy floated downriver, carried by water that never asked his name. A young man turned away by crowds who loved skill, until skill came from the wrong house. A student who lied for knowledge and paid for it with a curse that waits patiently for the worst moment. And a warrior who gave away the one protection the gods themselves stitched onto him. You're standing in the tent's dim edge, hearing the distant roar of war, like surf against rocks. Karna's fingers flex once, slow and thoughtful, as if he can already feel the weight of a bow. Outside, men shout his name with hope or hatred. Inside, Karna sits with the calm of someone who has been underestimated so often it has become background noise. He doesn't look frightened. He looks used to it, used to standing at the center of impossible choices, used to paying full price for things other men get for free. And when he finally rises, the movement is smooth, unhurried, a man standing up to meet the day. The light catches his face as he steps toward the tent opening. For a heartbeat, it almost looks like the sun is following him. Loyal, possessive, a father who shows up late and expects to be forgiven. Karna doesn't glance back. He doesn't need to. He walks out into the noise and heat, into dust that clings to the skin, into a world that will always question whether he belongs. And with every step, you can feel it, the ache that powers him, the pride that steadies him, the curses that trail behind like shadows at noon. The most naturally gifted warrior alive, wrapped in bad luck, wrapped in worse choices, still walking. But there was another warrior who walked among gods, not because he climbed to heaven, because heaven came down for him. And you feel the difference immediately, like stepping from a crowded tent into open air. Because Arjuna's power doesn't begin on a battlefield. It begins where the world goes quiet. High above the shouting plains, far from the banners and the conch shells, the land turns sharp and spare. The trees thin out, the wind grows teeth. Even the birds seem to speak more softly, as if the mountains don't like interruptions. You're climbing with him now. Your breath catches faster than it should. The air is too light, like someone stole half of it while you weren't looking. And the cold isn't the gentle kind that makes you cozy. It's the clean, bright cold that bites through cloth and goes straight for bone. Arjuna keeps moving. No complaint, no dramatic speeches, just step after step on stone that has seen 1,000 pilgrim feet and never once offered pity. His hair is tied back. Dust has given way to frost. The smell around you is pine resin, snow melt, and the faint smoke of distant hermit fires clinging to the wind. This is the part nobody sings about in the courts. The blisters, the hunger, the way your stomach becomes a quiet animal that curls up and waits, the way your throat feels scraped raw from breathing air so thin it barely counts. And still, he climbs, because he wants something that can't be taken by bargaining. He wants a weapon meant for gods. And the funny thing, if you're allowed a little humor up here, where even jokes might freeze, is that Arjuna, prince of shining halls, looks exactly like any other stubborn pilgrim now. One more man in rough cloth, hair damp with sweat that turns cold too quickly, trying not to slip on a rock that absolutely does not care about royal bloodlines. Day by day, the world becomes more sky than earth. At night, a small fire huddles close to him, and the flames smell of dry cedar and ghee. Sparks rise and vanish. The stars hang low and sharp, bright as new polished steel. Somewhere far below, rivers keep running, patient and indifferent, as if wars are just another kind of weather. And Arjuna does what warriors do when there's no enemy in sight. He practices. He draws his bow again and again, slow and steady, the string creaking softly in the cold. He aims at nothing, at everything, at the empty air, as if the mountain itself is watching and needs convincing. You sit near enough to hear his breath. In, out, in, out. Even his patience feels strained. Some days a hermit wanders past and pretends not to stare too long at the famous archer. Some days a deer appears on the ridge, looks down like it's judging the entire idea of human ambition, and disappears again. And then, one morning, the stillness changes. You don't see anything at first. That's the trick of it. The forest looks the same. Snow-dusted branches, stone, shadow, light. But your skin knows. The hairs on your arms lift as if a storm is thinking about being born. The air smells different too, sharper, almost metallic, like lightning has been waiting just beyond the trees. Arjuna rises without hurry, but the way his shoulders settle tells you he feels it. This is the moment. You're standing behind him on a narrow path, and the mountain seems to hold its breath with you. A figure appears ahead, broad-shouldered, wrapped in rough hides, carrying himself like the forest belongs to him. A hunter, a stranger, the kind of man who doesn't ask permission because he's never needed it. Arjuna's hand goes to his bow, not aggressively, instinctively. Because up here, danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply walks toward you with calm feet and a steady gaze. They clash, not like courtly duelists, not like men trying to impress an audience. This is raw and immediate, the way two storms collide when there's nowhere else to go. Arjuna's arrows fly. The hunter moves like smoke between trees. The sound of bowstrings snaps through the cold air, sharp as breaking ice. The mountain throws the echoes back at you. It feels as if the rocks themselves are listening, and then it stops being only arrows. They close the distance, and suddenly it's fists and breath and the scrape of boots on stone. Snow scatters, pine needles crush underfoot, releasing their sharp green scent. The hunter's grip is like iron wrapped in bark. Arjuna strains. You can see it in his jaw, in the set of his neck, in the way he refuses to yield even an inch. He's fought kings and demons and armies, but this is different. This is like wrestling the will of the mountain itself. There's a moment, brief, wild, when you think absurdly that this is how boulders settle disputes. And then the hunter changes, not slowly, not politely. One blink, and the air becomes enormous. The rough hides are still there, but they look like a costume now, like a joke the universe told for its own amusement. The figure swells into something vast and blazing, matted hair crowned with a crescent moon, a throat dark as storm cloud, serpents like living ornaments, eyes that hold both mischief and the end of worlds. Shiva. You don't so much understand it as feel it in your bones. Arjuna doesn't fall backward. He doesn't run. He does what he always does when the world turns impossible. He bows. His breath comes fast, fogging the air. The snow around them seems suddenly very small, very ordinary, as if embarrassed to be near this kind of presence. Shiva regards him with a calm that is almost playful, not cruel, not gentle, just vast. Arjuna offers his devotion with the fierce sincerity of a man who has put everything on one throw. He doesn't ask for comfort. He asks for a weapon that no one should ever want. And Shiva, satisfied, gives it. Not by placing some glittering object in Arjuna's hands, like a gift at a festival. It comes as a permission, a charge, a vow stamped into the soul. The Pashupatastra is not something you wave around to feel important. It's a storm asleep. When the grant is made, you feel it in the air. The hairs on your neck lift again. The space around Arjuna seems to hum, low and dangerous, like a temple bell struck once and left to vibrate into silence. Arjuna's face doesn't brighten, it steadies, because now he's carrying something that could unmake the very ground he stands on, and the mountain, having witnessed enough, returns to being a mountain. Wind moves through branches. A few flakes drift down lazily, as if nothing monumental just happened. But you walk with him again, and every step feels heavier, not in the legs, in the heart. He continues onward, because Shiva was not the only one watching. The gods have been watching too. The way older relatives watch a young man who insists he can handle a task meant for grown-ups. And then, without warning, without transition that makes human sense, the world opens. It isn't like walking through a door. It's like stepping into a different kind of light. One moment you're in mountain air that bites your lips, and the next you're in a place where the air feels warm and alive, perfumed with sandalwood and flowering trees that don't belong to any season you've known. The ground beneath your feet is smooth, cool, and shining, like polished stone that remembers the touch of bare souls. Indra's court. You hear music, but not the kind played by tired men at a war camp. It's a sound that seems to come from the air itself. Soft strings, distant drums, a rhythm like rain falling on leaves. The scent is jasmine and incense, and something crisp, like water drawn from a deep well. You blink because your eyes don't know where to settle. Columns rise like frozen lightning. Banners hang without wind and still ripple as if they're breathing. Somewhere, fountains sing quietly, and every drop sounds like a tiny bell. Arjuna stands there, a mortal in rough, travel-worn cloth, and for a heartbeat, he looks almost out of place. Almost, then you see it. The way the beings here look at him isn't pity, it isn't amusement, it's recognition. Apsaras pass, smiling like they know secrets. Attendants move with effortless grace. And there are warriors too, radiant, armed, composed, whose silence feels heavier than speech. This is not a feast, it's an armory disguised as paradise. Indra is there, kingly and bright, with the weight of thunder held in a calm expression. There's something oddly familiar in the set of his gaze when it lands on Arjuna. Not just pride, ownership, softened into affection. He doesn't need to announce what everyone already knows. Arjuna is his son. And you can almost feel how complicated that makes everything. Because it's one thing to be favored by a god. It's another thing to be favored by a father who rules the sky. Indra receives him with the kind of warmth that tries not to look like warmth. Arjuna is given water that tastes like melted snow and sweet fruit. Garlands that smell of fresh blossoms touch his shoulders, cool and soft. For a brief moment, after all that cold stone and thin air, it's tempting to forget there's a war waiting below. Tempting. But Arjuna doesn't forget. He trains, and if you're imagining endless glory, you should see the daily work of it. The practice yards of heaven are still practice yards. Sweat still happens, muscles still ache, pride still gets bruised. Only here, the instructors are not forgiving old men with canes. They are beings who have never missed. Arjuna learns to hold weapons that feel like living things. Some are heavy in the hand, some strangely light, as if they want to fly away. Some hum so softly you think it's your own blood in your ears, until you realize the sound continues. even when you stop breathing for a moment. One weapon, when it is placed near him, makes the air taste faintly of smoke and lightning. Another makes the hairs on his arms rise with quiet warning, like an animal's instinct. He is taught mantras, not as words, but as keys. He learns that power is not only force, it is restraint. A weapon given by gods is not impressed by bravado. It responds to steadiness, to discipline, to a mind that can remain clear when the world is burning. There is a moment, small, almost laughable, when Arjuna, exhausted, sits down as if he expects the ground to be forgiving. It isn't. Even in heaven, stone is stone. He winces, rubs his shoulder, and for an instant you see the simple truth. The greatest archer of his age is still a man who slept badly on mountains and now has to stand up and act dignified in front of immortal beings. It's almost comforting. Almost. Because then comes the part that is not comforting at all. The true receiving, not the lesson, not the display, the responsibility. A weapon is entrusted to him that carries a silence inside it. The Brahmastra is not loud when it arrives. It doesn't need to be. It sits in the mind like a sun behind a veil, waiting. When Arjuna accepts it, the space around him seems to tighten, as if the world itself is listening more closely. You can sense his breath slow, controlled, because there are gifts you receive with joy, and gifts you receive like a man taking custody of a fire. He doesn't smile much after that. He becomes careful. You watch him bow to Indra, to the divine teachers, to the guardians of those terrible secrets. You watch him carry the knowledge the way someone carries a sleeping child, close, steady, protective, terrified of stumbling. And in the quiet moments, when the court's music drifts far away and the perfumed air feels too gentle to be real, you see it in his eyes. He is thinking of Kurukshetra, of dusty throats and sweating horses, of brothers and vows and faces he cannot bear to strike. All this heaven light, all these shining gifts, and still the battlefield waits like a shadow at the edge of dawn. When the time comes for him to leave, there is no grand farewell that erases what's coming. He is blessed, he is honored, he is armed in ways no ordinary man should ever be armed. And yet, as he steps away from Indra's brilliant court, the strange lightness fades. Not because the gods take anything back, because Arjuna understands at last what he's really carrying. Not trophies, not proof, but endings. You follow him as the scent of jasmine thins, as the music becomes distant, as the air cools again, and the world hardens back into stone and wind. And when your feet find the rough mountain path once more, you feel it like a weight settling onto your shoulders. This is what it means to touch heaven, to be given power that could crack the earth, and to pray with everything in you that you never have to use it. The war continues, but something has shifted. The greatest duel is over, and now you must witness what comes after. Morning comes in a thin, dusty gold, the kind that makes every spear point look holy from far away. Up close, it's just heat rising off trampled earth. The air tastes of old smoke and churned mud, and the camps wake like tired beasts, snorting horses, groaning wheels, men coughing into their sleeves as if they can cough the whole war out of their lungs. Somewhere, a conch calls. Somewhere a drum answers, not joyful, just stubborn. And today, the Kauravas dress their despair in ceremony. You can smell it before you see it. Ghee in the fire, sweet incense trying to cover the staleness of fear. Brahmanas are fed, Gold changes hands, and musicians play as if music can stitch a torn kingdom back together. Karna stands in the center of it, receiving the thread tied around his wrists, the public sign that he now carries the army's fate. 2 days, the elders whisper with their eyes. 2 days of command, like a lamp lit in a storm. Karna's face doesn't soften, it sharpens. You're close enough to see the dust clinging to the edge of his armor, the faint sheen of oil on his arms where someone has tried to make him look like a king. He looks past the ritual like a man staring at an appointment with the sun. And behind him, because war has a cruel sense of arrangement, stands Shalya. Handsome, proud, dressed like a ruler, even when he's just a charioteer. The man who holds the reins, the man who decides whether your chariot glides or jolts, the man who can praise you with one breath and sting you with the next. Shalya has been trapped into this service, and he wears the trap like perfume. He needles Karna without even raising his voice. He brings up Arjuna as if he's praising a festival elephant, magnificent, unstoppable, adored by the gods. He tells little stories meant to land like pebbles in a sandal, a crow puffing itself up, mistaking scraps for glory, trying to strut among swans. Karna's jaw tightens, and you can almost feel the words he swallows. He doesn't need a charioteer today. He needs a wall, but the wall has reins in his hands. The army surges forward anyway. Dust climbs into the sky in thick, rolling sheets, and the field opens like a mouth. You're standing at the edge of the noise when Karna finally moves, when his chariot pushes into the press of men and standards, and everything around him starts to bend. It's like watching a strong river cut through reeds. Soldiers scatter, horses shy away, even experienced warriors flinch because they've seen what he can do when the sun is high and his pride is awake. Arrows begin to hiss, not one at a time, in waves. The sound is strange at first, like rain hitting 1,000 clay pots. Then it becomes its own weather. The air fills with the dry snap of bowstrings and the deeper thud of chariots hitting ruts. Somewhere, elephants trumpet in irritation, as if even they are offended to be included in this. Karna fights as if every arrow is a sentence he's waited years to say, and across the field, the Pandavas feel it. Yudhishthira rides out with a king's steadiness that has been cracked too many times. His armor gleams, but his eyes are tired. When Karna meets him, it happens fast. Too fast for pride to prepare itself. Karna's arrows find openings the way a knife finds seams in cloth. Yudhishthira's confidence folds, then tears. He turns back, stung and humiliated, fury rising like fever. You can hear it even from a distance, his anger spilling over, spilling onto Arjuna. He demands what he's been demanding inside himself for years. Why is Karna still standing? Why do vows feel like smoke? Why does the family keep paying and paying and paying? And then, in the worst possible moment, he touches the one thing a warrior like Arjuna cannot bear to hear. He insults Gandiva. It's like watching someone casually kick a sleeping cobra. Arjuna goes still. His hand tightens. You can almost see the vow clamp around his heart. Old words spoken long ago, meant to be noble, turning into a trap with teeth. For a breath, it looks like the war might shrink down to one terrible point: brother against brother. Krishna is there before disaster can fully bloom. He doesn't soothe, he steers. He reminds Arjuna, quietly, firmly, that dharma is not a straight road on a battlefield. That a vow doesn't give you permission to become a monster. that there are ways to release a promise without releasing a sword into your own bloodline. So Arjuna does the strangest thing. He wounds Yudhishthira with words instead of steel, fulfilling the vow's demand in a way that leaves everyone breathing. Then the heat breaks. The brothers collapse into grief, into embrace, into that helpless shaking that comes when you've stared over an edge and realized you almost jumped. Even here, even now, the air doesn't pause. It smells of sweat and crushed grass and hot metal, and the sun keeps climbing like it has nowhere else to be. And Karna is still out there. Later, too soon, Arjuna finds Karna again through the moving fog of war. Before the great duel truly locks into place, something small and sharp happens. Arjuna's arrows strike down a young warrior who fights with Karna's style in his wrists, Vrishasena, Karna's son. It's the kind of moment that doesn't need announcing. The way Karna's head turns tells you everything. The way his posture changes tells you more. Grief doesn't make him slow, it makes him dangerous. Now the field begins to clear around the two chariots, as if the war itself is backing away to give them space. On one side, Arjuna, steady as a storm held in a jar. Krishna at the reins, calm as if he's driving to a riverside picnic instead of into history. On the other, Karna, bright and rigid with purpose. Shalya holding his reins with hands that do not love him. You're close enough now that the world narrows. You can hear the creak of leather harness. The clink of metal rings on a bow. The dry, desperate sound of a horse blowing out its breath through flared nostrils. The air shimmers. Heat dances above the ground. Dust coats your tongue. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for, and it feels nothing like celebration. It feels like standing between two thunderheads. They begin, rapid, clean, arrows crossing so fast the eye can barely separate them, like silver fish in a river. Karna's aim is fierce, almost offended. Arjuna answers with that terrifying calm that comes from training in the company of gods. And Shalya, because a charioteer can be a battlefield all by himself, keeps sliding barbs into Karna's mind. A small praise of Arjuna here, a slight doubt there. It's like fighting while someone keeps tapping your shoulder. Karna snaps back at him, and for a breath, you almost expect the reins to be thrown down in insult. But they keep moving. The chariots circle, the horses scream and strain. The wheels grind the earth into powder. Then Karna reaches for something darker, the serpent weapon. You feel it before you understand it. An ugly chill inside the heat, as if shade has grown teeth. The arrow leaves Karna's bow, and it doesn't just fly. It hunts. There's a presence in it, a living vengeance, the snake Aswasana twisting his hatred into speed. It comes straight for Arjuna's neck. In that heartbeat, everything goes silent inside you. Your skin prickles. Even the dust seems to hang in the air, unsure. Krishna moves, not wildly, not with panic. He presses down, grounding the chariot with a force that feels like the whole earth answering him. The wheels sink just enough, just one cruel inch. The serpent weapon clips Arjuna's crown instead, shattering it into bright fragments that spin away like startled birds. The field roars. Karna has another shot ready. He could send the serpent again. Shalya urges him to do it, sharp and urgent. Even the snake's fury seems to beg for a second chance. But Karna refuses. His pride rises like a wall. He will not strike the same way twice. He will not repeat an arrow as if he's begging the universe for help. It's a noble rule. It is also the kind of rule that gets you claimed by a battlefield. They clash again, harder now. The sun beats down and sweat darkens the edges of armor. The smell of horses is thick, hot hide, foam, and fear. Somewhere nearby, a banner falls, and the cloth flaps like a trapped bird. Arjuna's eyes never leave Karna. Karna's eyes never leave Arjuna. And then it happens, not with a trumpet call, not with a drum roll, with a simple, stupid sound, a wheel sucking into mud. The earth here has been churned for days, cut by hooves, hammered by wheels, softened by spilled water and crushed grass. It isn't a noble ground anymore. It's tired. Karna's chariot jolts. One side dips. The horses stumble. For a breath, it looks almost comical. This grand, shining hero suddenly riding a cart with a broken leg. The kind of mishap that would get a farmer laughed at in a village lane. But no one laughs, because you can see Karna's face. He knows. The curse has found its hour. Karna jerks the reins, tries to pull free. The wheel sinks deeper, as if the earth has decided it has held up enough kings and warriors and is done with all of them. Shalya's hands tighten. His mouth forms words you can't hear, but his eyes flick once, quick as guilt, toward the stuck wheel. Karna jumps down. You see his feet hit the mud. You see his hands go to the wheel, fingers digging, straining, trying to lift what has suddenly become impossibly heavy. His armor flashes in the sun, and for the first time, he looks human. Not the sun's son, not the invincible rival, just a man in the dirt, fighting the ground. And then the second trap springs. Parashurama's curse doesn't arrive with thunder. It arrives like forgetting. Karna reaches for a mantra, one of those sacred, precise strings of sound that unlock terrible weapons. And it's simply gone. The way a dream vanishes when you wake. The way a name slips away when you're staring right at the face. His brow tightens. He tries again. Nothing. You can almost feel the panic he refuses to show. The heat, the noise, the pressure of Arjuna watching from the chariot above him. Karna's lips move without confidence now, shaping syllables that will not stay. Behind Arjuna, Krishna leans forward slightly. His voice cuts through the chaos, not loud, just unavoidable. He reminds Arjuna of what Karna is asking for. He reminds him of where Karna's tenderness was when Draupadi was dragged into that hall, where Karna's righteousness was when dice decided a kingdom, where mercy was when Abhimanyu was ringed and brought down. Krishna's words don't sound like philosophy here. They sound like a ledger read out at the worst possible time. Karna looks up from the wheel, mud on his hands, sunlight in his eyes. He pleads for the rules of war now, the ones everyone loved when they were useful. He asks for a pause, for fairness, for the chance to climb back onto his chariot and finish this as equals. For a heartbeat, the whole field seems to hold its breath, waiting to see if compassion still exists on this ground. Arjuna's hands tighten around Gandiva. You're close enough to hear the bow creak as it bends, that deep living wood sound like a tree groaning in a storm. The string hums. The air feels suddenly thin, as if even breath has stepped aside. Arjuna's face is wet, not with tears, not now, just sweat and dust mixed together. His eyes look older than his body. He doesn't look triumphant. He looks cornered by necessity. Krishna's gaze stays steady. The chariot does not move. The horses stamp and toss their heads, impatient with human hesitation. Karna is still on the ground, one knee sunk into mud, both hands still gripping the wheel like he can wrestle the earth into obedience. Arjuna releases. The arrow flies, not flashy, not singing, just swift, sure, and final. Karna's body jolts. The head that wore the crown of Anga falls forward. The hands that gave away armor go still. For a moment, the sun itself seems to pause, unwilling to touch the earth that claimed him. The light seems to dull, and the battlefield's roar drops into a distant muffled sound, like you've put your head underwater. Karna falls, and the space he occupied, or the bright, stubborn space that refused to be erased, goes suddenly empty. Far away, someone cries out. Duryodhana, perhaps, or a soldier who had built his courage on Karna's shadow. The wind moves through torn banners. Dust drifts over the wheel that started it all. You stand there, feeling the heat on your skin, smelling the sharp, dry scent of churned earth. The duel everyone waited for is over. And it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a door closing softly on a room no one will ever enter again. The sun keeps moving. It doesn't pause for fallen heroes or broken vows or the hollow quiet that follows a great warrior's end. Dust still lifts in slow sheets across Kurukshetra, and the heat sits on your shoulders like a hand that won't let go. Somewhere, a conch tries to sound brave and comes out thin. The horses keep stamping. The crows keep their distance, patient as accountants. And then, through that shifting veil of grit, you feel it before you properly see it. A heaviness in the ground, a rhythm in the air. Bhima is coming, not with the shimmering strangeness of celestial weapons, not with mantras that make your skin prickle. He comes like a storm that forgot to bring rain. He comes like wind made solid, broad chest, thick arms, a walk that makes the earth remember it has bones. You're standing among tired men when he passes, and you feel the tremor in your feet. It's not dramatic, it's just undeniable. Even the banners seem to lean away to make room. And the strange part is, he doesn't look like a mystery. He looks like the answer to a very simple question. What happens when the god of wind decides to leave strength behind in human form? His mace rests on his shoulder as if it's a walking stick. The metal is dull with dust, the grip wrapped in worn cloth. No divine glow, no singing aura, just weight. He glances across the field, the way a hungry man glances at a pot still simmering. Somewhere in his gaze lives a promise he made long ago, when humiliation turned into a knot in the chest that never untied. The bitterness of that old day is still there, like burnt ghee at the back of the tongue. Because Bhima remembers. He remembers a queen dragged into an assembly like property. He remembers laughter that rang too long. He remembers a hand raised in insult, and the way his own fists closed so hard his nails bit his palm. On Kurukshetra, everyone is remembering something. For Bhima, memory isn't a thought, it's fuel. A gust of wind slides through the torn standards, carrying the smell of sweat, trampled grass, and old smoke from last night's fires. You hear the creak of leather straps, the clink of armor plates, and the low muttering of men who have seen too much daylight. Bhima steps forward anyway. And what's almost funny, softly, in the way life still slips humor into awful places, is that even here, even now, he still has the appetite of a man who could empty a village kitchen. There are stories in the camp of how cooks learned to hide extra pots when Bhima wandered near. How one poor man once offered him a light meal, and Bhima stared like someone had suggested drinking dew for dinner. War takes many things, but it doesn't take that. Not from him. You watch him crash into the press of battle, and the shape of the fighting changes around his body. Soldiers scatter without even meaning to. Lines break and reform like water around a rock. His arms swing, his shoulders roll, and the space in front of him clears in a way that doesn't feel like skill. It feels like weather. And still, you can sense what he is not doing. He isn't playing at elegance. He isn't trying to be admired. Bhima doesn't fight to be praised. He fights because something inside him cannot live with itself if it doesn't. A shout rises from somewhere, swallowed by the greater roar. Wheels grind over stone and hard-packed earth. The sun beats down until the metal on helmets looks hot enough to sting your eyes. You blink dust away, and for a moment the field tilts, as if the world itself is drowsy with exhaustion. That's when your mind slips backward, like a foot finding an old path. Back to the forest, not the battlefield forest, torn and trampled, a real one. Green shade, wet earth, the breath of leaves. You're walking there with them, and the air smells of rain-soaked bark and crushed jasmine. Your feet sink slightly into mud that isn't churned by chariots, only softened by monsoon mercy. Kunti is there, not a queen on a throne, but a mother with dust on her sari hem. Exile has narrowed her face and sharpened her eyes. Her sons circle her like protective wolves, but it's Bhima who lifts her when the path turns steep, not delicately, carefully. He bends, and she leans against him, and his arms, those arms meant for breaking enemies, become a cradle. You feel the rough homespun of his cloth brush your skin as you walk close beside him. You smell the faint sharpness of sweat and the clean green scent of crushed leaves in his hair. He looks at the forest roots like they are a personal insult to his stomach, but he eats them anyway. He grumbles, of course. Bhima always grumbles. But his hands don't shake. When Kunti's breath catches, he slows without being told. And when she is tired enough to close her eyes, he carries her like she weighs nothing at all. That's Bhima too. Strength that announce itself as kindness, but does the work anyway. The memory fades as quickly as it came, swallowed by the dry heat of Kurukshetra again. The air here is harsher, full of grit. A broken chariot wheel lies half buried like a discarded bracelet. Bhima is still moving, still pushing, still refusing to bend. And then another memory, sharper, more painful, slides in like a thorn. Draupadi. You can see her under a canopy that flutters in the wind, the fabric snapping softly like a restless bird. There's the smell of oil lamps and marigold garlands, trying their best to pretend the world is safe. She isn't safe. Her eyes are swollen from weeping, and her breath comes in small, furious bursts, like she's trying not to shatter in front of anyone. The room is crowded, but she is alone in the way grief can isolate a person. Bhima comes to her. He doesn't offer pretty words. That's not him. He kneels, impossibly for a man that large, and he steadies her, the way you steady someone stepping off a boat onto land. His palm, so broad it could cover half a child's back, rests between her shoulders. You hear the rustle of silk. You hear the low hiss of lamps. Outside, the palace courtyard is full of ordinary sounds. A dog barking, a servant calling for water, someone laughing in the distance, as if the world hasn't split open. Bhima's face is set like carved stone, but his touch is gentle. And in that gentleness lives a terrible truth. He can promise revenge. He can promise protection. He can promise to break the world if he has to, but he cannot unmake what was done. He cannot give her back the day before humiliation. Even Bhima cannot lift that weight. A gust of hot wind snaps you back to the field again. A banner flaps loose. Sand stings your cheek. Somewhere, a man coughs until it sounds like his lungs are full of dust. The war keeps going. It keeps stripping away names until only the raw heart of it remains. Old hatred, old vows, old pride, standing in the open with nowhere left to hide. And at the end of it all, it comes down to a circle scratched into the earth. A duel, Bhima and Duryodhana. You feel the crowd around you tighten without meaning to. Even exhausted men find energy for this, the way tired villagers still wake for a midnight fire. The air trembles with anticipation and dread, thick as boiled sugar. Duryodhana steps in, armored, proud, a man who has always believed the world owes him a throne. Bhima stands opposite, bare-armed, dust-streaked, looking less like a prince and more like a force of nature that learned to wear a human face. The mace in his hands looks heavier now, not because it changed, because everything has. You can smell churned earth warmed by sun. You can hear the low murmur of thousands of throats holding their breath. Somewhere far off, a conch calls out, then falters, as if even it doesn't know what. Sound belongs here. Bhima doesn't speak much, but you remember the vow in him, burning for years. Once, long ago, he had sworn, softly, dangerously, I will break your thigh. Now that vow stands between them like a drawn line. The duel begins, and the world becomes circles, feet shifting, dust rising, maces swinging with a sound like thunder caught in a jar. Each time metal meets metal, the vibration runs into your teeth. The sun watches without blinking. Bhima's breath comes steady, deep, almost calm. Duryodhana's moves are sharp, practiced, desperate to prove himself at the very end. And then, one moment, quick as a blink, Bhima shifts. His mace swings low. There's a crack like a branch snapping in dry heat. Duryodhana's pride collapses with his stance, and he drops, the breath punched out of him. The earth seems to exhale, sending up a little puff of dust around his fallen form. Not triumph, not joy, just the finality of a long-promised end arriving. Bhima stands over him, chest heaving, the mace hanging heavy at his side. For a heartbeat, he looks like he might roar, like he might shake the sky. But what comes over his face isn't celebration. It's something quieter, something almost bewildered, because the strongest man alive has finally done what he said he would do. And it doesn't bring the lost years back. It doesn't wash the dice dust from Draupadi's hair. It doesn't unmake Abhimanyu's lonely stand. It doesn't restore the friends who fell, the teachers who were brought down, the brothers who will never laugh the same way again. You're close enough to see Bhima's shoulders rise and fall, close enough to see dust clinging to the sweat on his neck. He looks, for just a moment, like someone who has been carrying a mountain and has suddenly set it down, only to realize his arms still ache. Around him, Kurukshetra begins to quiet. The sound doesn't vanish all at once. It thins. It frays at the edges. It becomes scattered. One chariot wheel turning slowly, one horse snorting, one distant call for water. Bhima turns away. The wind moves through the field, warm and tired, dragging the smell of trampled grass and old smoke across your face. And as you watch him walk, each step still heavy, still sure, you understand the shape of his strength. He needed no astras to become terrifying. He needed no celestial training to become unstoppable. All he ever needed was love strong enough to turn into rage. And even that love, vast as it is, couldn't stop everything he loved from burning. He keeps walking anyway because that's what Bhima does. Because wind does not know how to quit. It only knows how to move on, carrying the dust of what was lost into the waiting air. So after all of that, after the arrows and the curses and the 18 days that changed everything, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? Because you can stand on the edge of Kurukshetra and still feel your mind trying to do what minds always do. Pick a champion, name a winner, decide who was the strongest, as if strength is a crown you can hand to one head. But the field won't cooperate. The wind that slides past your ears is warm and dusty, and it smells of trampled grass, chi from old lamps, and smoke that never fully left. It's the smell of a question that doesn't have a neat answer. Or maybe it has an answer that isn't neat on purpose. Power in this world is never just power. It's always tied to something, a vow, a debt, a duty, a love, a flaw you can't outgrow. And when you look back at those five, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Arjuna, Bhima, you start to see it clearly. Each of them held something mighty in their hands, and each of them paid for it in a different coin. Think of Bhishma first. You remember him in the night before battle. Ancient shoulders, iron calm, eyes that have seen too much to be easily shaken. He had that terrifying gift, the power to choose his own end. A man like that should have been the freest person on earth. But he wasn't free at all. His power sat inside a cage made of his own promise. Dharma, the duty that holds the world together, can be beautiful like that. It can also be heavy enough to crush the person carrying it. Bhishma shows you the hardest part of duty. You can do everything right by your vow and still end up standing for something wrong. He protects a throne because he swore to. He loves the very boys he must face as enemies. And in the end, he lies on arrows, unable to move, still choosing endurance over release, because even then, he won't break himself. Power without freedom is a prison. And Bhishma, the unbreakable one, is the prisoner who never once rattles the bars. Now Drona. It's almost impossible to think about him without tasting the bitterness of it. A teacher should be the safest person in your life, the one who lifts your hands into the right shape, the one who makes impossible things feel possible. You can still see that training ground in your mind, the sun bright on sand, the hush of boys trying not to breathe too loudly, Drona demanding focus so sharp it hurts, until Arjuna sees only the bird's eye and everything else fades. That's skill, real skill, the kind that makes crowds go silent. And yet, when war comes, that skill gets harnessed. A promise is made to a king who doesn't deserve it. Gratitude turns into obligation, and suddenly the hands that taught children to aim are directing a battlefield like a net. Drona shows you that mastery without wisdom is dangerous. Not because skill is bad, because skill obeys whoever holds the leash. In the heat of Kurukshetra, Dharma becomes, do what you must, but wisdom asks quietly and stubbornly, for whom? Drona's tragedy is that he doesn't stop in time to answer that. And the war doesn't wait for teachers to untie the knots in their own hearts. Then Karna, sunlit, wounded, proud enough to burn. He is the one people remember in pieces, the great archer, the man with the shining armor, the loyal friend, the rival who finally met Arjuna. But if you hold him as a whole person, you feel the ache at the center. A child set afloat on a river, A young man hearing charioteer's son like a slap again and again until his teeth grind from holding back rage. A warrior who becomes generous because generosity is one kind of power nobody can deny. And then that day, unthinkable and simple, when he gives away the very protection he was born with, not because it's smart, because dignity matters to him more than survival. Karma is the word that follows Karna like a shadow, not punishment, not a neat little scorecard. Karma is the web of causes that keeps tightening when you keep pulling the wrong thread. A curse spoken in fatigue, a choice made out of pride, a friendship that becomes a chain. Karna teaches something strangely comforting, even in tragedy. Gifts are real, but they don't erase consequences. You can be brilliant, you can be brave, you can still arrive at the moment where the wheel sinks, the mantra slips away, and fate finally collects what has been owed. And yet, this matters. Karna does not become small at the end. Even when everything is collapsing, something in him stands upright. The dignity survives, not as victory, as selfhood. Now Arjuna. People think of him as the most blessed. Indra's son, heaven-taught, weapons that hum like thunder in the hand. But you've already stood beside him when the conches blew and the two armies waited. You felt his knees go strange. You watched Gandiva slip from his grip. That moment matters as much as any arrow he ever loosed, because Arjuna shows you that true strength isn't only in striking, it's in seeing. Seeing who stands in front of you, seeing what a win actually costs. Maya is the word that hovers near him. Illusion, the surface world that looks solid until it shatters. On the battlefield, Maya says, this is only about kingdoms, insults, revenge, lines drawn in the dust. Arjuna's breakdown is him suddenly seeing through it. He realizes the enemy has faces he loves. And then Krishna, steady as a river current, pulls him back, not into numbness, but into clarity. Not because war is good, because duty can still exist, even when your heart is breaking. Arjuna's lesson is gentle and severe at once. Even the strongest need guidance. Even the most gifted can freeze. And sometimes devotion, bhakti, that leaning of the soul toward the divine, isn't sweet singing in a temple. Sometimes it's picking up your bow with tears still on your face and doing what must be done anyway. One brief line from that chariot stays with you, quiet as a lamp flame. Do your work, no drama, no fireworks, just the kind of instruction that changes a life. And then Bhima, wind made into a man. No catalogue of astras, no secret mantras, just the raw fact of him. You've watched him move through the war like a storm that learned to walk upright. You've also watched him kneel beside his own people, hands gentle when nobody is looking. Because Bhima's strength isn't only muscles and roar, it's love. Love that becomes protection. Love that becomes fury when someone he loves is hurt. Love that keeps going even after the field has taken too much. If power can corrupt, Bhima is the proof that love can steady it. He doesn't fight for elegance. He fights because some things are not bearable and he refuses to bear them quietly. And when he finally brings down the one he swore to bring down, the victory lands like a stone in the stomach. No sweetness, only the end of a long burning vow. So when people ask who was the strongest, Kurukshetra stays silent. Because strength is not one thing here. Bhishma has endurance that outlasts pain. Drona has skill that shapes a whole war. Karna has pride and generosity that won't bend. Arjuna has the discipline to act without being owned by the outcome. Bhima has love that refuses to die, even when everything else does. That's what power really meant in this world. Not a contest, a responsibility. Dharma is the shape of your responsibility. Karma is the way your choices keep echoing. Maya is the glittering distraction that tries to convince you none of it matters until it's too late. And the peace in all of this, the strange, sleepy peace, is that you don't have to hold the entire war in your chest. You only have to hold the truth it leaves behind. Power will come to you in some form, a role, a talent, a voice people listen to, a duty you didn't ask for. And when it comes, you'll remember these five faces in the dust, not as winners, as warnings, as companions, as reminders. Because the real question was never who stood tallest on the battlefield. It was always what kind of person you become when you're given the power to change someone else's life. The wind moves again, softer now, and the field feels very far away, like a dream finally settling. And in that settling, you can let the weight of it all loosen just a little while the night keeps watch. The questions fade, the warriors rest, and Kurukshetra grows quiet at last. Dawn arrives the way it always does, soft at the edges, almost shy. A pale wash of light slides across the plain, and the sky looks innocent again. The wind is cooler now, carrying the faint bite of old smoke and wet earth. You step onto the field as if you're stepping into a place that should not exist. No conches, no drums, no shouting banners snapping like thunder, only silence. The ground is uneven, churned long ago and then left to settle in its own time. Dust has found every footprint and filled it in. Grass has begun the slow work of returning, a thin green stubbornness pushing up through places that once shook with chariots. Somewhere far off, a lone bird calls, not a battle cry, just a mourning sound, the kind you'd hear near a village well. And still, Kurukshetra doesn't feel empty. It feels listened to. You can almost sense where the great chariot stood, as if the air remembers their weight. A faint crease in the land where wheels dug in. A shallow dip where a banner pole once pressed into the soil. Even the wind seems to slow there, as though it's being polite. The smell is different now. No fresh sweat, no hot metal, no fear turning the stomach. Just dry grass, a trace of ash, and that clean scent that comes after night, like the world has washed its face. A farmer comes later in the season, when the sun is high and the work is ordinary again. He walks behind his oxen with a patient stick and a cloth over his head. The plow bites the earth, and the earth answers. Clink, not stone. He bends, squints, brushes away the dirt with his thumb. An arrowhead, old iron, dulled, still sharp enough to make him careful. He sets it aside on a flat rock with the others he's found over the years. Not because he knows whose it was, not because he's counting trophies, because some things shouldn't be thrown back into the furrow like they were nothing. By noon, the field shimmers with heat. You can feel it rising in waves, turning distant trees into watery ghosts. The soil is warm beneath your feet, and if you kneel, it stains your fingers the color of the plain, this quiet, stubborn brown. When the rains come, they come hard. Monsoon water drums the earth, fills the low places, and runs in quick little streams that don't care what happened here. The puddles mirror the sky. Frogs begin their ridiculous singing like they've waited all year for permission. And in the villages nearby, life keeps doing what life does. A grandmother sits on a threshold at dusk, shelling peas into a brass bowl. Her bangles click softly with every movement. Children gather like moths to a lamp, drawn by the promise of a tale instead of sleep. Their faces glow in the firelight, wide-eyed, dusty-kneed, still sticky from mango. They beg for the names the way children always do. They want the biggest, brightest ones. Bhishma, the grandfather, who would not fall until he agreed to. Drona, whose hands could teach and undo in the same lifetime. Karna, shining and stubborn as the sun at noon. Arjuna, steady as a star you can navigate by. Bhima, all storm and tenderness, never separated cleanly. The children always ask the same thing in 100 different ways. Who was strongest? Who would win? The grandmother smiles without hurry, letting the question hang in the air like incense. And she tells them anyway, because the asking is part of the blessing. You can hear it as you stand here, this whole field turned into a listening bowl, collecting voices across generations. The story travels on breath, on lullabies, on the rhythm of bangles and cooking pots and rain on clay roofs. In temples, too, the names still move through the air. A bell rings, clear and bright, and its sound seems to clean the space around it. Ghee lamps flicker, making golden halos on stone. Incense curls upward, sandalwood and something sweet, jasmine maybe, clinging to hair and cloth. Someone folds their hands, eyes closed, and the world narrows to flame and prayer. No battlefield in sight, and yet the memory of it sits quietly in the background, like a distant hill you can't forget once you've seen it. Outside, a street vendor fans a small fire under a pan, and spices hit hot oil with a hiss that makes your mouth water. A cow ambles past, utterly unbothered by history. A child runs, laughing, chasing a hoop down an alley. Kurukshetra, too, keeps changing. Days layer over days. Footprints of travelers, wheels of carts, seeds dropped by birds. And when night comes, it arrives gently here. The wind cools, and the grass whispers against itself. Stars appear one by one, uncountable, patient. If you lie back, right here, where the earth is firm and the air is open, you can smell dust that has warmed all day and is now letting go of heat. Somewhere, far away, someone begins telling the tale again. Not loudly, not to prove anything, just to pass it on. And on this quiet field, with nothing left to win and nothing left to lose, the rest feels deep. The kind that settles into the bones, the kind that doesn't need permission. The plain breathes, the sky holds, and the last trace of chariot wheels fades into the night like a sound you almost heard, then didn't.